Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Michael A. Harding for On the Arts. I'm very excited to have with us a special person in the studio today. This is Kathy Cieslewitz. Kathy is the curator of the Sears Gallery Museum here on the campus of Dixie State University. And before we actually get into the interview portion of the show, there are a few things I want to tell you. First of all, the purpose of this show is to hopefully enlighten the public as to all of these little wonderful artistic secrets that we have around St. George. A lot of times people don't think about the arts when they come here. They come for the weather and the hiking and things of that sort, and that is fantastic. But we have so much more to offer, and I'm very excited for the fact that we can open up doors for people to experience the arts, and that's theater, that's music, that's writing, that's literature, all of these things. And today we're going to be focusing on the museum work that's here in St. George. Now, I also want to put a special shout out thank you to my producer. I'm the one who gets to be heard on the radio all of the time, but I do want to give a shout out to my wonderful producer who schedules the guests and keeps me in order. That is Christina Harding. She's one of the best producers out there, and she's also my wife. And so I'm telling all of the gentlemen out there, back off, and just being very, very prideful in that. So thank you very, very much, sweetheart. I appreciate all that you're doing. Now, getting on to our guest here. This is Kathy Cieslewitz. How are you doing today?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. It's my pleasure. I've had the pleasure of knowing you for actually about 10 years now, and we've passed each other in the halls of the Eccles Fine Arts Center actually quite often. And I want to tell you, not only are you always very, very pleasant, but you're one of the positive, the positive energies around that building. It's really interesting when you're dealing with a lot of theater people like myself or the students or any of the theater faculty. You're getting dramatic. That's just what we do. And also the music people, they walk around rehearsing, either they're singing or they're practicing their instruments. They're in their own head. And then you've got Kathy Cieslewitz, who's walking around with this great smile on her face. And you can see her in the art gallery. You can see her going back to her little cave at the back of the Eccles building. But Kathy, I'm so excited to have you here so people can get to know you. Now, just a few things about you that I find absolutely fascinating. Back in 2016, you were named the Utah Museum Educator of the Year by the Utah Art Education Association. What does that entail? Why did you get this?
Well, that was really a surprise to me as well. And it's a process of nomination, and you send in your resume and things like that. So I don't know. I just feel like I was really shocked, as everyone. But I do. That is what I do day in and day out. And I never expected to get any recognition for it. And it was, it's really quite a thrill, and especially because at heart, I'm a teacher. And to be recognized by the teaching organization of the state was really special and important.
Fantastic. I do have a quote here that you said back in 2016. You said, "No one in education works passionately for recognition. However, educators have this insatiable passion to inspire, encourage, and excite others to learn. When we see eyes light up or we see our students succeed and sometimes get a simple thank you, it makes it all worthwhile."
I still hold to that quote.
And that really does come across in your attitude and such. What do you teach here at the university and also around town?
Well, different things, and I do have a background in teaching. But here I'm teaching through the museum, so it's more of a visual experience. And of course, the museum is there for education, for educating our students and the community members, and also for teaching artists and giving them opportunities. So I get to use that experience a lot. And one of my background in teaching is I'm a certified Montessori teacher, and I've taught
Really?
2-year-olds up through 8-year-olds, and the whole idea there is to observe what your student needs and then provide that. And I just think that way.
Got it. And for our listeners, would you please define Montessori? What does that mean?
Maria Montessori was the first woman doctor in Italy, and she was working with children that were in what they actually called at that time an insane asylum. They were with all different aged people, and they were really children that didn't have an opportunity to learn anything. And she started watching the things that they were doing. For instance, they would take their breadcrumbs and start lining them up. And so she started to develop materials to help them learn, and had such great success that it became her system of learning. And we have quite a few Montessori preschools and charter schools in our area now. And anyway, I love that whole theory, and it holds to any age.
Were you part of setting up these schools, or have they just popped up around here?
Actually, I was at the time. First of all, my family helped restore a home where preschool and elementary was developed with Laura Bergeson, and then moved into a building that had belonged to her family. Some people might remember it as the old key shop on about 2nd South. And so my husband built the school that's in back of that, and also restored the home in front, which is interesting because that was the old Brigham Young's brother. His first name escapes me right now, but he lived in that home, and my great-great-grandfather was invited to teach school in that home for a term way so long ago. And then here, decades and decades and decades later, I was teaching there.
Very
and
nice.
I always thought that was still quite thrilling to me.
It seems like you have quite a good route here in St. George.
Yeah, several. Darius Clement helped with a lot of the settlements here. And then we bought some property in Tokerville. Originally, we don't live there now, where Paul's great-great-grandfather lived, John Steele. So it comes in always. Everybody's from Dixie eventually, right?
Right. It all comes back to Dixie.
Yes, it does.
Well, let me tell you, I'm from Virginia, as a matter of fact, and which is interesting. In the Civil War, we were known as Northerners to everybody below us, and we were known as Southerners to everybody
Right.
above us. So we were in that no man's land. But I'll tell you, it's an interesting experience trying to explain to my friends back in Virginia that I teach at Dixie State University in southern Utah. I always get that little twinge of the eye thinking, you better explain this to me.
Well, I live right where they made the cotton, so it was a very apt name.
Got it. And so since you've been here for so long, you've got so many roots here in St. George. How have you seen the arts develop over your time here?
Well, for a long time, there's been different art groups, and the longest standing one is the Watercolor Society. And there's been several photography groups that have met for a very long time. And then the oil painting, or all the other arts, it was called Visual Arts Association at one time. Went through a lot of changes over time. And even before I was here, I had some involvement in that. And they tried very hard what they were really looking for was a free space. And I kept telling them, you will never have a free space. Look at what your artists need and then provide that for them. See, my Montessori training coming through. Now the artists know how I teach them. And so I worked with them over time in the other art organizations. And I had, we have a great art community, and we refer each other to different people with expertise. And one alumni from Dixie, Alicia Tolman Burton now, came in, and she said that she wanted some experience in administration. So I said, well, how would you like to start an art walk? And I helped her get through that, and now it's evolved and changed, and so has she. and I'm very proud of her. And then Bobby Wonkier came in one day and said the same thing. And I said, well, how would you like to do a studio tour? So I trained her, and she is way over my head now. And we have Arts to Zion, and the studio tour is huge. And Bobby and I have been working with artists to teach them about Facebook and how to develop their professional page and all the things that ties into that, and how to do it and how to make it work. And so that, and then when I got this job, I started, again, I was looking at the art department that I graduated from, and I loved that place so much and all the people over there. And I was thinking, well, we let these kids graduate, and then they don't know anything about the art world. So I started the business of art, and we did that for 8 years in Kanab as an outreach program. And now it's back over here, and we teach artists about the business of art. And then I got Evening for Educators, and I said, but I'm not an educating curator. And I'm working so hard, the work of, several people. And they said, well, who else will do it? So I took that on, and it's the most successful Evening for Educators that we have in the state. And I love doing it. It's a lot of fun. And we teach teachers. And then, I just do all these things that, and I look at them and I think at the root, it's all about teaching.
Well, that's one of the things I love about you, Kathy. You've mentioned all of these things that you saw a need for, and then you filled them by creating these programs and joining these programs and such. I'd just like to submit to everybody out there in St. George who has loved anything about the arts here. Kathy has just demonstrated why she is one of the bedrocks of the arts here. When you look at everything that she has developed and such, and I am in awe of everything that you've done, Kathy. I do want to just put out a little backwards plug to something I spoke to the mayor about I think it was 2 weeks ago when he came on the air. We talked about all of the art that you see around town. And I just want to share with you my experience of that. I think it's wonderful that we're living in a community where it is important to have these pieces of art out there on Main Street and in the center of the city and such. And I love that, but I'm going to put out a plea. No, not a plea, just a reaction. I love seeing the art, but I was driving on Main Street just the other day, and I look up, and there is a huge arachnid looking at me. I don't know if you've seen this,
Yes.
but a huge spider sculpture. I'd just like to say I probably won't be driving by Main Street for a while on that, though it is a beautiful, beautiful piece of work. Now, you mentioned, Kathy, that you are part of the museum here, and it's not only programs that you do, but tell us about the Sears Gallery.
Well, the Sears Art Museum, we like to call it the jewel on campus. It's a beautiful space, and it's always free. We do 5 to 6 big shows every year. Right now, right at the heels of the Invitational, that's the biggest regional art show and sale in the region, I've got the art department students and professors coming in as we speak, and it opens this Friday, 7 to 8:30, and everyone's invited. And then the show is over by May 4th because the students graduate. So it's an exciting show. And then the space is closed during May for repairs, and then June. Oh, I forgot the date. It's a Friday in June.
What does it keep
Look
checking?
at the website, which is searsart.com. We have a very famous, nationally known artist that is beloved by everyone here, whose name is Julie Rogers. And so we're excited to have a one-person show by her. And she has been traveling to the interior of China and Guatemala before they're completely westernized, and she can really capture the spirit of those people. And that's going to be a great exhibit that I'm looking forward to. And her son is he's a potter. He's going to do the 3D exhibit part of that show.
I'm going to tell you, you can't see me right now, those of you who are listening. Usually we do have 2 cameras here in the studio. We have a camera on Kathy. She was not all that pleased about it, but I think she looks absolutely charming. And usually there's a camera on myself as well, which takes away from the charm of watching. And you can watch this either on YouTube with a live stream, Or you can also watch it on Facebook. If you go to Radio St. George, that's Radio St. George. You don't have to spell out the saint. But if you could have seen me when she said we were having a Julie Rogers show, when I got here to Dixie State, this was back in 2007, the fall of 2007. I love the fact that there's this art museum right outside of my office. Literally, you've got the museum, and then you walk down the hall, and there's my office. And I would love coming out of my office when I started to feel claustrophobic and just walk around the museum and see what was out there. And there was always one particular painting that stood out to me. And it was just one that drew me. They were very, very different pictures. Sometimes they would be studies of a young person. Sometimes they would be pioneer studies. Sometimes they would just be out on the farm or the ranch or things of that sort. And I was always drawn to this particular style of painting. And I believe it was in about 2010 that I started looking at the name of who was drawing these, and it was Julie Rogers.
Right.
And I started researching and looking at some of her works and such, and I found that hers had been the paintings I had been looking at, was drawn to every single time. So I've looked forward every year to going into that gallery and seeing what she's offered. You couldn't see me when she said that, but I think I about jumped out of the chair.
Yes, you did.
I am so excited to see this exhibit. And I don't think, Kathy, that people are aware of the caliber of artists that we have who just love contributing to the Sears. And we even have on faculty Del Parsons, who's a very, very well-known painter and such. I think a lot of people, when they think about the arts, they think about going to hear a concert or going to see a play. I don't know that a lot of people think, well, I'm going to go to a museum for an hour and look at paintings. And a lot of people think, oh, that's boring. I'm just going to go look at paintings or look at sculptures. But just as I was drawn to those paintings by Julie Rogers, I think everyone that I've seen come out of that gallery seems to be affected or have some favorite of something they've seen. And we also have in there the Pieta. Could you tell us about that?
Yes, it's number 14 of 100. They hope to have one in every state and the rest throughout the world. But it's a company that has the rights to use the molds that were taken from the original pieces by Michelangelo. So they have a Vatican seal on them, and they have this company, Arte Divine, that makes them. And I started working with them about 4 years ago, and the gentleman that I was working with just kind of disappeared, and he had left a sample with me. So I enjoyed the head the best of the Madonna for a long time until I could get a hold of Arte Divine, and then still nothing happened, although I talked to them every once in a while. And then one day a gentleman came in and he said, I would like to donate a Pietà. And I almost said, well, we already have a bust. You know? And then I realized he was talking about the entire piece, and I just got chills. And I still get chills thinking about when we did the ribbon cutting. It was just absolutely amazing. But it took several months to do all of the facilitating, and there's a lot of paperwork and logistics to get a piece like that here. And I knew exactly where I was going to put it when he told me. And this is the gentleman that wants to remain anonymous, although I know him. And he has done a lot of work on this campus in the past. He doesn't live here, but he just wanted to give back to Dixie. He and his wife considered a lot of different places to place it and decided here. And we are really blessed by that. And we also had the opportunity that we should be getting many more pieces. There's one on my dock right now. I'm just waiting for the donor.
And can you share with us, or is this a surprise?
Yeah, well, it's the, if you saw Monuments Men, and they kept talking about the Bruges Madonna, they hoped they could find it. At the end, they find it. That's what it is. And it's a beautiful piece with Mary and Christ as a young child. So, I'm hoping that we get pieces in different buildings and we can have a Michelangelo walk. Another thing is I'm hoping that we get to build another wing or a real tall part that eventually will get the David.
Wow. I'll tell you, we're going to turn into the Louvre West.
I hope so.
Well, that's right. This is actually blowing my mind a little bit. You talk about these things as, oh, yeah, we can get this in here. We can get this in here. It's as if a curator from Paris came over and said, yeah, we'd like to display the Mona Lisa for a while. I think I might have to get a little excited about that.
Well, the fact is, not very many people get to go to the Vatican to see the original Pietà, and it is a wonderful experience. And because this gentleman had that opportunity and had such a wonderful experience viewing that, and most people do, and I certainly did, and now people that will never get there can come in for free, and they can sit there as long as they want. I think we'll have artists in there drawing and painting. So it's a wonderful opportunity for our community and the university.
That's tremendous. Some of my favorite experiences are when I don't know there's going to be an opening in the gallery. And please know, this is one of the reasons for this show. We want to make sure that these things aren't things that people don't know. We really want to get the awareness out there. But I mentioned that my office is just down the way from the gallery. And I'll come in sometimes in the evenings or on the weekends just to take care of some things. And I'll walk in, and all of a sudden I've walked into a very elegant occasion. I'll see people hobnobbing around. You'll see a lot of turtlenecks and blazers, and it's very hushed and reverent, and yet there's this bubbling excitement. And I have to tell you, that really excites me when I walk in the building and I see this incredible gallery opening, something that you hear about in the big cities, but it's happening right here.
Well, ours are a lot more casual. But
I always feel underdressed. I walk in and I feel like a hobo when I walk in.
Absolutely not. Everybody's always welcome to those. And it is a great occasion and a great opportunity for everyone.
That's tremendous. And Kathy, if you look at St. George and look at what we've already got and what has grown here, what else would you like to do? Do you have any great plans, any great dreams? I'm asking you to reveal your secrets of what's to come.
Well, I'm hoping that we're going to have more murals in town. And actually, we had a professor who has left, Rob Colvin. He got a full-time job elsewhere. But before he left, he put a nonprofit in place where we can get help with funding for murals. And we do have some places around town that are already kind of earmarked for that kind of thing. It just takes money because we are trying to pay our artists. They need to eat too.
Right.
So, but there are opportunities for that. There are a lot of things that are kind of going under stream that are happening and will be revealed as they're ready. But things are always growing here, and our art community is very active and very inviting and inclusive, and a great thing.
Tremendous. And you mentioned that there was a website people could go to get information on these. What was that?
It's SearsArt.com.
Sears Art, that's SearsArt.com.
Yes.
Tremendous. And I also want to just point something out to the students of Kathy Cieslewicz, as well as anybody who's considering taking classes. I think hopefully it's apparent after this show that we have a gem here in Kathy. She's very enthusiastic about art. She's very enthusiastic about teaching, as is demonstrated by the honors that she's received and such. And I would encourage everyone, whether you're a student here at Dixie or whether you're just a citizen of St. George, try to take advantage of Kathy. Try and keep track, keep your ear to the ground of any classes that she's going to be teaching or any initiatives that she's put forth. I can say that I have been tremendously influenced by having her in the building. It's always a pleasure to come out of my office and have a conversation with her. I always feel refreshed and inspired when I head back. And one other thing that you said, and I do hope this is to all those parents out there whose children are thinking about going into the arts. There are a lot of stereotypical responses from parents, whether it be their child wanting to be an actor or their child wanting to be a singer or their child wanting to be a sculptor, that you can't make a living at that. Why don't you get a practical degree? Something you mentioned earlier, Kathy, was that you teach the business of art. And what a lot of people don't realize is that that is a big part of this term we call show business. It's not enough just to teach these young artists to do their craft, which of course we want to develop, we want to put them on a good journey, but they do need to learn the business. I've mentioned before that I was a professional actor for going on 2 decades before I got here, and I still do professional work. And my father, a lieutenant colonel in the Army, never quite got it, but I had to keep explaining to him that acting is really contract work. You just line up your contracts, just as in so many other businesses,
Yeah.
and it is possible. It is possible to be an artist. And if you don't want to be an artist full time, or if you're finding it difficult, yeah, there's something called the day job. There are other things you can pursue. But one of the great things about art is it's always going to be there. All you have to do is make it. I tell my students, if you want to go into the theater and you have to take some time off, that's okay. The theater will still be there when you get back. Nothing can stop us from creating. Would you agree with that, Kathy?
I definitely agree, and I think it's definitely a reflection and also the story of our culture. So it's very, very important.
Got it. Well, Kathy, thank you so much for being with us here today. As we get ready for our next guests, please know coming in are going to be Chris Davies and Chelsea Richards talking about a different art form that they actually perform not only here in St. George, in Dixie West, as I call it, but also in Nebraska, where they have their own theater. As we transition over, I thought it would be very appropriate to play you a piece from Stephen Sondheim's Sunday in the Park with George. Please enjoy this excerpt, and we'll be back very soon. All right, that was from Stephen
I'm here
Sondheim's
to prove
Sunday
the
in the
purple
Park with
mattress
George.
blows memory
And
foam
I thought that was a
out of the
very
bedroom.
fitting thing to
Only purple passes the-
transition here. It has to do with an art gallery as well as theater. And I have two new guests here in the studio with me. This is Chris Davies and Chelsea. Hi, guys.
Hi.
And yeah, actually lean into the microphone.
Hello.
Okay, hello.
Absolutely. And I'm going to turn up your mics a little bit. As you can tell, yes, they do a lot of acting, but they like being in the background, as you can tell from how quiet they are. Just a little bit of introduction to Chris and Chelsea. I'm very honored to call them my friends and my colleagues here at Dixie State University. They are incredibly talented, incredibly inspirational, and I just want to give them a shout out for their collegiality. It's always a pleasure to work with them creatively, and we also have some great discussions as to how to teach. So it's a pleasure to have you guys here.
Thank
you.
you.
All right, now, Chris Davies, reading over some of these bullet points that you've given me here. Let's see, you have a BA in Theater and Speech and Education from Hastings College in Nebraska.
Yes.
Fantastic. You also have taught speech and English. And let's see, I'm just going to run down this. These are very extensive biographies that they have given me. Lots of detail, lots of fodder for conversation. And currently, not only do you teach here, but you also run a theater back in Nebraska, the Harlan County Dam Playhouse.
Yes.
Fantastic. I'm going to ask you a little more information about that in just a bit.
Okay.
And we also have Chelsea Richards, also from Nebraska. And I'll tell you, when I met them, one of the most exciting things I had to talk to them about was tornadoes. I couldn't, I've always been fascinated by them. Absolutely. And Chelsea, aren't you a tornado chaser? Did I hear that correctly?
That's what I was always going to be when I grew up. And then I kind of just got derailed a little bit by theater. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, theater has a tendency to do that. And you also played a lot of sports, didn't you?
Yeah. I used to, back when I was in high school, I would play in the basketball games and then go straight over to our theater in Nebraska. I would leave, I would shower and get over and try to make curtain for our performances over there. So I did a lot of double tasking there.
Got it. Well, I've always told my student actors that acting is an athletic event, so you were probably fantastic there.
Absolutely.
And you've actually got quite an impressive acting resume here. You've been in a lot of musicals, Pippin, Into the Woods, Gypsy, Wizard of Oz, and Lucy, and You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and also Aunt Eller in Oklahoma.
Yep.
So, and you act as well, don't you, Chris?
A little bit.
Just a little bit. I'll say what I love about these two is they are theater generalists. Yes, they have their focus, especially here at the university. Chris Davies is the head of our costume department, if you will, in the Department of Theater. She is everything costume. And Chelsea is the head of everything scenic design and also scene painting and things. What you see on stage, that's Chelsea in putting it all together. But by virtue of the fact that they both work at the theater back in Nebraska, they do everything. Tell us a little bit about that theater.
Well, this is going to be our 28th year open in this building. We were approached, my late husband and I, back in 1990 by the tourism group in Harlan County, Nebraska, to see if we wanted to put a dinner theater into this 1954 kind of bomb shelter of a school. And we said, yeah, sure, not knowing what we were going to get into with a 1954 building that had been up and running as a K-12 school till about 1984, and it had been derelict from there on. So we said yes, and we jumped in. The building was pretty well trashed. It's a lake community, so in the summertime, this sleepy little town of 199 grows to about 60,000 on holiday weekends.
A little bit of a growth
Yeah.
there.
And derelict buildings, people seem drawn to them, and a lot of people have broken in and broken windows and all the fluorescent lights, and we had carpet with all these glass shards in it. There are tunnels underneath, so we would find that people had come down there and like drug mattresses, and they were living down there at one point. So we had a huge cleanup. We had walls to knock down. We had things to move in. So the K-12 building became a theater with a working scene shop, a working costume shop, a dormitory for the actors, because we were both teaching at the University of Kearney in Nebraska at the time, and we brought our students there. They helped us build the structure. We seat 225 in a raked kind of theater. We built a proscenium on. It was a gymatorium basically, and we built onto the stage and then built where the seats are so that it goes up. We have storage under the stage for all of our costumes, and another room of storage just for costumes. We have everything in our scene shop that you could possibly need. We do everything on site. We build all the costumes. We don't rent. We build them all to build up our stock. This year and in the past years, I've been here this is my 5th year. I've brought students from Dixie back as interns every year that I've been here. It's been 1 or 2, but this year we get to take 4 students with us, and we're excited about that. And we just run in the summer months. Sometimes we'll do 2 shows. Sometimes we'll do 3 shows. This summer we're doing Nonsense 2 and Shrek, the musical. And so our kids are pretty excited about doing those.
I would
those
hope
shows.
so.
Yeah.
Fun shows.
Yeah. And they learn how to do everything. They have to do yard maintenance because the town wants it to look nice on the outside. So we do that. They have to learn building maintenance and keeping it clean. They also all have to build the sets. They all have to paint. They all have to build costumes. They all have to cook for each other, get along in a communal living atmosphere. I direct most of the shows. I also act in the shows. Chelsea designs all the scenery, and she also acts in the shows as well. She's a wonderful musical talent. Great voice. Great voice.
I would agree with that. If you could see, well, actually you can. The camera is on her. The look on her face was, no, I don't think so. I am officially refuting you. Yes, I do think so. And you mentioned that there were vagrants and people sleeping in the basements and things of that sort.
Yes.
And please forgive me. I am an actor. I like the sound of my own voice, which is why I'm on radio. I want everybody to hear my own voice. But back in Las Vegas, I spent some time there, oh gosh, about maybe 13, 14 years ago. I was working in one of the shows. It was a clean, family-friendly show. I just want everybody to know. In the Excalibur Casino, I was in the Tournament of Kings. And I did a lot of extra work on films, and there's a lot going on down there just for some extra income. And I got involved with an agent who was very, very successful. This agent, you could tell, they were very lucrative. They had all sorts of money, and they were always the go-to agent. Well, it turns out that she had a fantastic system, and she's no longer an agent, I should say this. Anybody that she found that was homeless became an extra to her. And I will say she used everybody to the maximum she could. And that's why she had so much money. Of course, there weren't union rates going on there. And I just thought how wonderful. You had a built-in set of workers in the basement of the Harlan County Dam Playhouse. And I'm going to get shut down off the radio for sharing that kind of thing. But Chelsea, you've also worked at this theater and such. How many years have you been there?
This will be my 18th, actually. So I got involved with some friends who were working there at the time when I was in high school. So I was on the athletic track, and I was playing volleyball, I was playing basketball, I was doing track, I was doing all of those things. But then one of my friends in the summertime, I was actually out on the basketball courts at my high school. And he stopped and said, "Hey, we're one person short for this show that we're doing, and I know you had mentioned you might be interested. So why don't you just come with me right now, put down the basketball, and come over, and we'll introduce you to Chris and Charlie, and see what happens." And so we did, and so that first show, it was Into the Woods, and I just had a little bit part at the very, very end. I was on stage for about 2 minutes.
Were you Snow White? Or?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right.
Curtain call.
So, and I haven't left ever since. I found a new track, and it's really the place that I found. It sounds naive to say it, but growing up in that community in an agricultural area, it's not part of the conversation. Theater's not as a career. I didn't know it was a viable career option, that people could actually make a living that way. And that's where I found theater and what it could be, and people who were living it and breathing it and had made it their life. And it was such a wake-up call to me to find that in that little community. And so that's why I keep going back there every single year, is because I want everybody who's there now, and the kids who are growing up there now, and adults who find us there. We find adults there all the time who come over for the first time, to be able to discover that for themselves, have the opportunity to, because I think without us there in that little community, the possibility's just gone. They don't find it as part of the conversation. So it's an important place for me.
You've said a few times the word community, and I would even assert that not only is it a part of the community, but the arts bring a community together.
Yes,
How
definitely.
wonderful to have a bunch of people get together who may not have a lot of experience with theater, or may have seen theater, or may have been scared of theater, getting together and just doing theater. Something that I mentioned earlier with Kathy Cieslewitz for the arts was that we can always do it. Theater's not going anywhere. You might not be making a profession at it, but you can do it. Same thing with the arts, and you also can make it your profession. I mentioned earlier my father's a lieutenant colonel in the Army, career, and my brother's a concert pianist, and I'm an actor. So he's a very, very confused man. Now, with this, what kind of shows do you do at the Harlan County Dam Playhouse? I mean, certainly, if you're bringing people in, do you want to start with King Lear?
No.
That was
Farmers don't really, that's
Yeah.
not what their draw is in that
was
community.
hard for us to figure out in the beginning. We did a lot of experimentation. We started bringing things in like laundry and bourbon, and
that's by James McClure,
Yeah.
correct? And what's the story of that one? Why bring that in?
well, it was nice because we had just a few people, and we didn't have. We needed smaller shows for our for the company that we had back then, which was just our college students from Kearney. And we were doing, nice people dancing to good country music. And it was really hard for the first...
Which is the title of a play, by the way, by
Yeah.
Lee Blessing.
Yeah. It's a good play. It really is. And Lee Blessing's an awesome playwright. But
And if I may just interrupt
Sure.
on that, a wonderfully funny play, but also very heartfelt,
yes.
if you will. I'm just going to put a little bit out there. A nun with Tourette's.
Yes.
And let's just play with that for
yes.
a while.
Yes. And a confused young boy. It was hard for us because we would get comments. Then we had a dinner theater going as well. We called it the Chuck Box Barbecue, and did ribs and just a kind of a smorgasbord sort of thing. And the people were like, where are the nice people? And I don't hear any country music. And why aren't they dancing? and why can't you leave that young nun alone? Kind of thing. So they didn't understand what we were doing. So we had to look around for the types of plays that would bring people in. And that's when we stumbled upon this little museum in Mount Pleasant, Iowa called the Theater of American Repertoire. And it's only about circle stock troops back from the turn of the century to about 1950. And they had some of their scripts there, which are wonderfully funny scripts. I mean, if I was to compare them to anything today on television, it would be like to the Lucille Ball Show, those kind of comedies.
I love Lucy.
Yeah,
Yeah, a little
exactly.
bit of Carol Burnett, maybe.
Yeah.
Right.
And they always had like racy titles, like In Bed with Grandpa and Natalie Needs a Nightie.
Right bed, wrong husband.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you're trying to put your hands over the ears of our younger listeners, don't worry. It's all very family friendly.
It is. That was what we decided. We needed to go with family friendly, something that everybody in the family could enjoy. And these plays were written by these troopers that picked a base, like say Kansas City, and then they went on a tour of about 50 miles in radius, and they did the plays. They struck the set every night, and then they put up a band and played for the people and danced. And so these troopers were like, in the trenches, and they wrote these plays as they were doing this. And so every night they had a new audience that they could see how it worked, and they could adjust it and rewrite. And that's what they did. And these plays are, some of them are 60, 70, 80 years old, and they're hysterically funny. They really are. The first time we did one, it was called Right Bed, Wrong Husband. And we were in rehearsals and reading it, and we thought, oh, man, this is just never going to play. We're not laughing. We don't feel it's funny. We got an audience in there, and immediately they just started laughing uproariously. And we looked at each other like, oh, my goodness, are our costumes falling apart? What's happening here? Are they laughing at? But they really enjoyed it. They're fun shows that are just, kind of like farces, five-door farces,
Right.
And we've kind of stuck with that for quite a while, and did all of the circle stocks that we could do. And then we started, educating our audience, and then we could start throwing in some things that were a little bit more modern, a little bit more racy. Of course, musicals always sell.
Right.
That's always the big draw. But that's kind of how we got to where we are right now.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I do want to let you know that we are actually out of time. This has gone
no.
incredibly quickly.
Sorry.
So the two of you, as well as Kathy, we would like to have you back on the show, and we'll be able to talk a little bit more, not only about the work you do in Nebraska, but particularly how blessed we are here in St. George that you've brought your work here. Again, St. George is full of people from other places who have great, great experience, and it's only enriching the people who are native here in St. George putting on their work. So any last parting thoughts that you have?
Put us on the spot. Really, I think it's just about theater for me, and how I found it and how it's taken me to where I am now. It's about finding connections with other people that you're working with. You know, the cliche is each show becomes a family.
True.
But those sorts of connections, and also, you know, when you're acting and when you're working with scripts, finding those connections within yourself, and discovering new things about yourself. So for me, it's all about. That's why I like to continue doing theater, is to make those connections for myself and for other people as well.
That's right. To build on that, I would encourage everybody, try to get a handle on the arts. Try to go out there and experience them. Get involved with a play. Get involved with making a sculpture, paint a picture, write a story, so that you can know yourself a little better. And also, the whole point of this show on the arts, get to know what's here available for you in St. George. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you. You'll hear us again on Thursday, where we'll have Paul Weens, who is, of course, the head conductor of the St. George Chambers Singers. And thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Chelsea and Chris. And we will see you at the Arts.